Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all here. It really is a tremendous pleasure for me to introduce our next keynote speaker, FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr. In his more than a decade of public service at the FCC, including both as a commissioner and as the FCC's general counsel, Commissioner Carr has been a powerful advocate for building out modern, high-speed wireless networks. Axios aptly labeled him a 5G crusader. He's been one of the strongest voices on the need to refill the spectrum pipeline, and he's explained that the U.S. is facing a substantial spectrum deficit, one that puts at risk the development of new technologies, makes it more challenging for providers to meet demand, and undermines our economic and national security. And Commissioner Carr has also fought for modernizing regulations and cutting red tape to accelerate wireless build-out. Commissioner Carr is passionate about communications technology. He's engaging and thoughtful about law and policy, and he's a friend to many of us here. We're honored to have him. Please join me in giving him a warm round of applause. Commissioner Carr, thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for the kind introduction. Look, I got to say, it is fantastic to get outside of Washington, D.C., to travel almost all the way across the country and spend time outside the Beltway with everyday Americans like Scott Bergman, like Will Johnson, like Will Adams, just your average, everyday people that, as a government official, it really helps me to do my job. No, but in all seriousness, it's good to get out of D.C. As you may have noticed, D.C. is a bit of a silly season right now. If you follow the news at all, there's lots of accusations about what's happened in the last 4 years, what's going to happen over the next couple of years, broken promises. And those are just my statements on the Dish Wireless proceeding at the FCC. That was for you. That was specifically for you. But no, it is good to be here. I mean, look, I think it's an important time for this country in terms of connectivity in general. I was just down last week in North Carolina. FCC Chairwoman was down in Western North Carolina. She was getting a firsthand sense of some of the damage that was down there. And I got to say, if you look back at all the storms that we've seen across this country, and unfortunately we're about to see another massive one hit in Florida, through every iteration of storms, we're learning things in America's wireless industry, wireline industry. I know it's CTIA, but I'll give some credit to the wireline guys as well. Connectivity consistently is improving throughout all of these storms. Part of that is we've gotten a little bit better about making sure that utility and other sort of road clearance crews aren't coming back in and cutting fiber and causing other problems on the back end. Things have gotten a lot better there. So for my part, I want to express my thanks and appreciation to everything that you've done, everything that your company's crews are going to do, I'm sure, in this upcoming storm as well. I just got in a couple hours ago. I got to see a couple of the panels here. A couple people asked if I got to see Alan Davidson's remarks. I did get to see Alan Davidson's remarks. I enjoyed those. Alan and I got to spend some time together a couple years ago. We traveled up to Alaska and saw some of the challenges that remain in terms of connecting people. Look, at the end of the day, he's got a very, very difficult job. I mean, to be someone in this administration that has to come here to this conference and talk about not delivering any megahertz of spectrum in the spectrum plan before the end of this administration, to have zero homes and businesses that have been connected, despite having $42 billion in 1,058 days. That's not an enviable situation to be in. I get it. But the reality is it's very important that we move quickly to connect Americans. If you look back at some of the proceedings that we did a couple years ago, I believe RDOF was mentioned, the RDOF auction. Right now there are thousands and thousands and thousands of homes and businesses that have been brought across the digital divide because of the FCC's hard work on the RDOF auction and the carrier's work to build out. Personally, I think that's a good thing, especially as we saw, COVID-19 hit, work from home orders go out across the country. We had those builds done and in place in the years following the 2020 auction. I think that was a really, really good thing. And that brings me to where we are right now. I had a legal advisor that loved to give names to the speeches I would give. Now, no one would ever notice the names of the speeches, but they always were really good names of the speeches. One was the Gretzky test. There was a couple other really innovative names. If I were to name these particular remarks, I think I would call them the seed corn remarks. And here's why. we've been in tough situations before in this country when it comes to connectivity. If you go back just a few short years ago, 2015, 2016, the spectrum cupboard was empty. There were press reports and news stories out there about the US falling behind China and other countries when it came to 5G. Similarly, we had sort of flatline when it came to new infrastructure builds in this country. Back in 2016, for instance, I think we put up only something like 706 new cell sites. But we went to work, and we were able to turn things around. In those few short years after that, we freed up something like 6,000 megahertz of spectrum just for licensed use, in addition to thousands of megahertz for unlicensed use as well. We went about doing the hard work of reforming permitting and infrastructure laws, and that helped to result in massive, unprecedented new builds. Again, just at the right time as COVID-19 was hitting. And if you look at where we've been the last couple of years, it's a bit of sort of two different stories. I think if you look at it from a consumer perspective, it's actually been a pretty good last couple of years. Prices are down, speeds are up, there's more competition than ever before, and coverage has been expanded as well. If you're a consumer, it's a pretty good deal. But if you look at it from a regulatory perspective, from is the government delivering on its ability to help you go out there and connect Americans, that's where I think we aren't doing our job. And the consequences, again, may not be being felt right at this moment. But when you project out a year, 2 years, 3 years, I think there are some storm clouds on the horizon for the industry. We have to get back to freeing up spectrum. Right now we're spending, or supposed to be spending, billions and billions of dollars for a new infrastructure build, but we're not streamlining permitting along the way. And at the end of the day, that's like stepping on the gas and the brakes at the same time. So we have to get back to the tried and true playbook of freeing up spectrum and of streamlining permitting. It's not easy. It's not easy today, but it wasn't easy before either. I remember working with Chairman Pai, briefing him, prepping him when he would go to the White House, into the Oval Office, and he would go up with the president, with senior officials at DOD, and he would make the case about why we need to free up this spectrum band. C-band wasn't easy. 5.9 wasn't easy. The L-band was not easy. 6 gigahertz also not easy. Those were all difficult fights. But what Chairman Pai did was he accumulated political capital, he walked into the White House, and he came out delivering results. I get it. I'll be the first person to admit that it wasn't always pretty. The process, such as it was probably more wild than anything else. But what matters at the end of the day is the results, and we were able to get the job done. I agree with some of the comments I heard from Will Johnson that it's fine that we're working to put better processes in place. I think we can get perfect ones, we can get even shorter that, we can get better ones, that's fine. But unless we're actually moving megahertz, it doesn't make a difference. We have to focus on individual spectrum bands and each of the needs of those spectrum bands to move them forward one at a time, get them back into the pipeline, and that's how we move forward. We've done this before. Again, we've been in a tough spot where the spectrum cupboards were bare in 16 and 17. We've been without a lot of new infrastructure actions. We can do it. And part of it, I think, is continue to tell the story of the mobile wireless industry, of the work that you all are doing. Some people look back right now and they say, well, is 5G really all that it was cracked up to be? Is it really all that we were sold on? And I think, yeah, it is. Think about how far we've come. When I first started in this job in 2017, one of my first visits was to an Ericsson facility in Plano, Texas. They showed me 5G. Did they have a phone that they showed me with 5G? No, they did not, okay? They took me into a minivan. They closed the door. There were sort of racks of servers inside, and we drove around the parking lot, and that was 5G. So in a very, very short time, from a technology perspective, we went from a 5G van to having sort of 5G right there in our pocket. Right now, 5G is delivering vastly lower prices for consumers. Just think about the in-home broadband market. The lion's share of new subscribers that are signing up for in-home broadband market, my friends in cable may not like this, but they're signing up for fixed wireless. Millions and millions of Americans have in-home broadband today from fixed wireless because of 5G, because of the efficiencies that 5G have brought. So prices are lower, the digital divide is narrowing. If you go on the FCC's broadband map right now and you sort of scroll around, Sometimes when I have very little to do, I sort of scroll around some of the places, and you zoom in, there'll be sort of pinpricks of places in the middle of nowhere that are marked as having service, and sometimes you'll think, I'll think, maybe this is a mistake. But if you zoom in, what you'll find is those are places that have signed up for fixed wireless broadband, places that would be on the other side of the digital divide, but for the spectrum capacity and the efficiencies that 5G brings. So when we talk about 5G, I think it's less sort of theoretical about what it will do in the future, but it's more about what it's doing today to individual families to help bring them across the digital divide and to help lower the prices that they're paying. Finally, there's another piece of this. I think it's not just what we haven't been doing, there's a lot of stuff that we have been doing over the last couple of years that I disagree with. And there's a view in Washington that is looking to impose sort of more and more control on corporations across the board. I think the broadband industry is not immune to that. I think you see it in Title II, which is an effort to effectively regulate broadband providers like a 1930s style utility. You can see it in our sort of fraternal twin to that decision, the Digital Equity Order. But the good news there is we have some new tools to push back. Supreme Court's decision in Loper-Bright, the Major Questions Doctrine in West Virginia versus EPA, and the enforcement case, either Jarczy or Jarkisi. I've not got an official determination on the proper pronunciation of that. But those are cases that give the industry new tools to look at regulatory overreach and pushback. And so that's where I think we need to go. We need to get back to the tried and true playbook of moving actual megahertz out there. We got to get back to streamlining permitting, and that will help unleash what you all do well, which is build and connect Americans. And we have to sort of have a different relationship between the government and the private sector on these issues. We've done it before. We've been in a tough spot before, but we had to come back. We leapfrogged other countries when it came to connectivity. We can do it again. But I think it's incumbent on industry to continue to tell the message very practically. What does it mean when we get more megahertz of spectrum? What does it mean when we streamline permitting and create the incentives so that the people in Washington can start to deliver or do start to deliver those results again? I'm confident we can do it. We've done it before. Thanks so much. I'll appreciate it. Have a good conference.